Calling Foundation staff. Calling Foundation staff. Do you read me? This is Dr. Theron Sherman, anomalously broadcasting from Site 42. Do you read? If you read us, if you read our signal, give us a sign in the YouTube chat. Testing. Huzzah. I see a huzzah. I'm hoping that's a huzzah of audibility. I like being heard. It's the narcissist in me. What? Shut up, you. Get off my signal. Please make sure that you are following us on your encrypted, Foundation encrypted YouTube accounts. Do not like, share, and subscribe with your civilian accounts. Like, share, and subscribe with your Foundation encrypted accounts. That means you, Steve. We are going live in 3, 2, 1. Hey there, Foundation staff. This is Dr. Theron Sherman. Welcome to another anomalous broadcast from Site 42. For anybody out there unfamiliar with our show, the rundown goes like this. Number 1, I read you an SCP document after I move my microphone a little bit. I read you an SCP document. B, we open up the floor to the community to discuss what we've read. We are often visited by SCP authors, staff, and fans, and if we're lucky, the author of the article themselves show up to share some insight. Remember that if you'd like to join the conversation yourself, I will be monitoring the chat in between chapters and answering questions, as will my guests. Also remember that if you enjoy the show, leave a like and a comment to let us know, subscribe and hit the bell, and if you really want to help us out, become a patron at patreon.com/site42. Tonight, we are reading the opening of a series called AIAD, Artificial Intelligence Applications Division. And our panel, the authorship of the series, will be joining us tonight. So without further ado, let me bring on our guests. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
And so we have a panel of 4 guests, plus my little window here. We're going to go down the list and introduce everybody, starting with you, Isabi.
Hey, everyone. My name's Isabi. I helped contribute to this series. One of my first things here on the site, so really happy with how it turned out.
Fantastic. That puts us to Placeholder.
Hello. Go by the Placeholder Doctor. SCP wiki. Been author 6 months-ish now.
We're getting a little bit of in and out on your sound all of a sudden. I'll take this opportunity. I'll have you redo that. I'll take this opportunity. The best intro we can get is number 1, name. Number 2, pronouns. And number 3, SCP author, SCP at place in the SCP community. So once Placeholder gets his mic back on and maybe it works, try that again.
I'm going to try without the headset. Is this better?
Sounds gorgeous.
A lot better.
Fantastic. I go by PlaceholderMcD. I'm an SCP Wiki author, and I have been for about 6 months.
Welcome, welcome. That brings us to you, Human.
What's up, Bob? My Wikidot name is Human, as he said. Pronouns he, him. I am an SCP author. I've been on the site since 2017, but I only joined, this placeholder 6 months ago. Yeah.
And unfortunately, our 4th guest, Pentagon, is locked out of microphone tonight, but they will be participating via text. So, introduction, I'm Pentagon, he, him, his, they, them, whatever. Author, critter, reader, have been on the site since 2007, 2008. Only joined the last year, though. Woo, that's about as much lurking as you can do. You lurked the whole time until now. All right, so we are getting into AIAD. I've been informed that Placeholder has written both of these opening ones. Does anybody, because you all wrote the series overall, does anybody have any preamble to tonight's tales, the artificial intelligence classifications, and the SCP-5241 titled That Alien Message?
I had a little something to say.
Give it to us.
Nobody else wanted to. Well, we were working on these 2 pieces. When Placeholder was working on these 2. It was pretty much, we didn't know. We were in the preliminary stages of making our series. We had a plot outline and the characters and everything that would happen we planned, but we had some other things like characterization and characterization. Those weren't entirely planned yet. So in the middle of writing the series, I realized that the way Mnemazine or Mnemazine or whatever, however you pronounce it, in AI classification guide, her personality in this tale seems drastically different from the ways she appears in future tales. So just you know that we kind of retconned to that, but that's not really important. Why I
It
just said
happens.
I wanted to quickly mention that the AIAD, Artificial Intelligence Applications Division, is actually a canon that was originally made by LurkD, and LurkD's initial two series in there, I think they're called Hello World, and I forget what the other one are called, are the original foundation for the canon. Our series, Limited Memory, is set in this canon as part of the Canon Renaissance contest.
Oh, very cool.
this.
Oh, sorry.
sorry.
I was just going
No,
to say that, that this series really changed and developed a lot from when we started. Like, we did have a rough outline, but as we wrote the thing, our plot devices and our characterization changed drastically. So I think it's more of like a symbol of how our writing process developed over time. Like, and just looking back, it was a great experience to like just see how things went from the beginning to the end. So I know we're just going over the beginning of this series, but if you read the whole thing, you could kind of see how we improved over time.
Well, over a couple weeks, I plan on going over the whole thing with you guys. I have a mild bit of experience writing in a canon or something like that. A couple years back, there was what contest was it that we were a part of? It was Apocalypse Con, maybe?
DoomCon, yeah.
It was DoomCon, I think. And we had to create essentially a canon, or we were trying to create a canon. It was me, Blazing Trail, Modulum, and Yosiposi. And when we wrote ours, because it was for a contest, we had what ended up being 4 pieces. We never finished the canon. But because they had a sort of timeline, but we were writing them all at the same time and over a short period for a contest. So as I was adding things to my article, which took place at the end of the timeline, things would end up inserted into other bits and vice versa as we were thinking it over in process. How did that affect you guys with this? Because I know your series is actually, how many pieces is it?
It's 9. So we were fortunate, like we had enough time to sort of write them in order and like have one sit for a few days to sometimes like a week to get a sort of response, or for us to get an idea of like what we did well and what we didn't do well and what's going to work for the story. And like, because it's so visually based, and because that's sort of like a quirk of the canon in general, but especially in our series, you would get like parts of the story would be like influenced by certain evocative art pieces, or like vice versa. And so, I might draw like something of the villain like looking really menacing, and it inspires some later scene of the story, and then that ends up like being better than it would have been if we had gone the way that we were going to go. So that kind of thing happened a lot, and I think it was really important to have that sort of like natural progression as we figured out what sort of things we were honing in on with these pieces.
Love it when a plan comes together, right? However it comes together. So
really.
if you are in the YouTube chat, I want to point out that the links to these articles are in the description. You should go pull those up, if only because these articles are very visual driven. They have their own theme, which I am not capable of displaying here in OBS, but it's worth looking at to see that. I've got a couple of the images pulled up that I'll use to the best of my ability.
Etwal made me promise to mention that our theme that we use for our series is a fork of their theme. We took a lot of inspiration from the Y2K theme. It was actually what sort of gave me the idea for like what canon we would write in for Canon Renaissance, because the theme had come out recently and it was doing really well.
Fantastic. Do we have any other preamble before we get into article number 1?
I was gonna say something and I forgot.
Oh no! Well, I will take this sip of tea, and if you think about it before then, we can have it. A little longer. Still have time to think. Working on it. Slowly sipping.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, I can't believe that worked.
And I apologize to the other members of my team, but I'll have to admit that even though this did motivate me to write on a strict schedule consistently, I always found it hard to get things done on time. That's why we barely managed to scrape by the due date, why the epilogue to our series was posted weeks after the contest ended. I'd like to take this chance to publicly apologize to all of you for that. All right, let's start.
Hopefully, in a mood of forgiveness, let's begin the reading. So, we open with artificial intelligence classifications. Artificial intelligence classification guide. And so we have our first image. Now, is this character, is it Memazine with an M or Nemazine with an N?
Okay, so you pronounce all of the letters in the name is how I pronounce it. So I pronounce it Memnazine.
Memnazine.
Yeah.
Got it. All right, so the opening is a conversation between Memnazine and who we will see in a moment, Glasson. Hey there, reader. My name is Memnazine AIC, and I'd like to formally welcome you to the Artificial Intelligence Applications Division. Congrats on the new job, by the way. As you might have guessed, you'll be dealing with a lot of different types of AI around here. You're encouraged to read the following AI classification guide. Did you really just pretend to yawn for effect? Maybe I did. Did you really just interrupt my rad introduction? Proceed. Anyways, this stuff bores me, but considering you applied for this job, you're a huge nerd. So enjoy the guide. AI Classification Guide. Artificial Intelligence Applications Division, Site 15. Date, April 16th, 1996. Written by Director Nathan Valis, Site 15. Note, as technology progresses, the boundaries of normalcy expand. As the new millennium approaches, what was considered anomalous yesterday may be decommissioned today. On the other hand, technological progress allows informational anomalies to become more and more interconnected, accessible, and dangerous. As such, the following is an all-encompassing guide for any computer program which can be considered intelligent, and is not limited to those which are presently considered to be anomalous. Functionality. The types of functions an AI is able to perform. We have a table with class and description. Class 1, reactive. The most rudimentary form of artificial intelligence, is able to react to sensory data, does not possess memory from which to learn. Class 2, adaptive. Possesses memory and is able to learn from previous experiences in order to improve. Class 3, cognizant. Is able to understand, interpret, and predict the behaviors of other intelligent entities. Class 4, sentient. Possesses self-awareness and is able to understand itself in relation to its environment. Class 5, sapient. Possesses advanced awareness of the relationships between itself and other intelligent entities. Often possesses human-like attributes. Next table, intelligence. An AI's capacity to learn, adapt, and improve. Class and description. Narrow intelligence. Able to perform a single task or category of tasks. General intelligence. able to perform new tasks which it was not programmed to solve. Super intelligence, able to perform tasks which humans are not capable to perform. Able to perform tasks which humans are not able to perform, or at a level which humans are not capable of. Next table, alignment. The extent to which an AI's goals are aligned with humanity's goals. Class and description. Positive. Positive aligned. Utility function aligned with the interests of humanity and/or the Foundation. Neutral aligned. Utility function does not align with the interests of humanity and/or the Foundation, but is not actively detrimental. Negative aligned. Utility function aligned against the interests of humanity and/or the Foundation, is actively detrimental and/or malicious. The following is a list of artificially intelligent conscripts, or .AICs, employed by the Foundation. Designation, classification, and description are listed. 8B-A1.AIC, codename 8-Ball. Class 4, Positive Aligned, Narrow Intelligence, Gen 1. Originally designed in 1978 for message encryption, replacing the outdated Enigma graph system. Decommissioned in 1993, with exceptions for field activity. Glasson.AIC, codename Glasson. Class 4, Positive Aligned, General Intelligence, Gen 2. Began development in 1987 as a replacement for 8-Ball, and was eventually released in 1993. Glasson demonstrates several high-functioning logical processes and advanced learning capabilities. Mnemosyne.aic, codename Mnemosyne. Class 5, Positive Aligned General Intelligence, Gen 2+. Designed in 1996 in conjunction with the Counterconceptual Division to specialize in anti-memetic deconstruction and decryption. Mnemosyne.aic was developed in response to containment challenges posed by SCP-5241-A. And you see the pictures of Mnemosyne, 8-Ball, and Glasson. Sorry. In my picture order, it's Mnemosyne, Glasson, and 8-Ball. And that is the end of our classification guide, which is our preface to getting into SCP-5241. Before we continue, let's check in with the chat. Have a sip of... I was asked what kind of tea I'm drinking. This is really cheap, bottled, unsweet black tea. This is just a cold drink that I could have for the show. While I'm checking out the chat, does any of our author panel have anything they'd like to say about the classification guide before we move on?
Yeah, nothing in particular. It's not really a heavy piece. It's just supposed to be sort of a tone setting thing for like the kind of like terms and vocabulary you're going to interact with while like reading the series.
It seemed like it to me. Didn't seem like it. I was wondering if there were going to be any hints of narrative, anything that would kind of foreshadow something, but I didn't see a whole lot, but I also haven't read the whole thing, so maybe I'm just not seeing it yet. Shall we move?
Get more.
Say again, Tuman?
We get more into the narrative as the series goes along.
Party on. Let's begin then. We're doing SCP-5241. Teleprompter set. And item number SCP-5241. Level 3 5241 classified. Containment class Maxer. Confidential. Disruption class Amida. We have an image of SCP-5241. Note its anti-memetic properties. Special containment procedures. SCP-5241 has remained inert since April 10th, 1996, and appears to be neutralized. Instead, containment priority is assigned to SCP-5241-A. Inspection of SCP-5241's processes is to be performed by a viable prototype of Project Ruby prior to its disassembly. As of April 10th, 1996, SCP-5241-A has breached containment. Containment efforts are to be focused on monitoring internet sites and databases for informational patterns matching SCP-5241-A's unique signature. Due to its mutative properties, the continual development of new Class S/5241 nestics is considered infeasible. As such, Select Artificial Intelligence Applications Division personnel are to work with the Counter-Conceptual Division to develop Project Ruby, codename Mimazine, an artificially intelligent conscript, AIC, specializing in the detection and deconstruction of antimemetic encryption. This agent is to disable and retrieve relevant entities resembling SCP-5241-A for AIAD review. SCP-5241-B are to be kept separate at all costs. They are to be prevented from transferring to advanced electronic systems and are to be encrypted and contained in isolated, low-capacity drives. Personnel possessing a CRV, otherwise known as a cognitive resistance value, of below 14.0 are susceptible to assimilation by SCP-5241-B agents. As such, personnel are to proceed with extreme caution when within a 3-meter radius of any system inhabited by SCP-5241-B. Containment Committee Notice. At this time, claims from Group of Interest 004 regarding a connection between SCP-5241-A and SCP-001 remain unverified. Due to the similarities of their respective containment procedures, SCP-5241-A has been classified as Maxer until such claims can be conclusively ruled out. Ooh. Alright. Pausing for a moment, my teleprompter doesn't do footnotes very well. So, I don't have that footnote. If a footnote is... I will warn everybody in the audience, and you authors here, because it comes up once in a while. For footnotes, I typically leave them out because they break the flow of conversation, and most of the time authors use them in ways that don't really flesh out the story a whole lot. It just provides like a small detail. But if there is a footnote that is important, then y'all should probably shout it out at me. Make sense?
Got it.
Yeah.
I'll keep an eye on it.
Cool. I will keep running, and y'all let me know if a footnote becomes important.
This first one probably is important. Just to clarify for anyone who hasn't read Twisted Gears Cactus Proposal, The Broken God, the Maxer class refers to an anomaly which must be kept separated into several anomalous components.
Fantastic. That's good news. That is a good footnote. Thank you. All right. Now I've got a photo, which is a digital recreation of SCP-5241's inscription. And now we have the description. SCP-5241 is an 8 cm by 8 cm by 8 cm cube-shaped device, which is believed to be a containment mechanism for SCP-5241-A. It is composed of an unknown material, exhibiting an antimemetic property which causes personnel to be unable to retain information regarding its physical and chemical properties. This includes its visual information, resulting in the anomaly's appearance as a transparent cube frame when the viewer is not within its sphere of influence. That cube frame is the cube frame I showed you earlier. Boom, got it. Back to the text description. One face of SCP-5241 features inscribed symbols in an as-of-yet unknown language, pending identification and translation by the Linguistics Department. See Addendum 5241.4. SCP-5241-A is a telepathic artificial intelligence of unknown origin. It can interact with and transfer itself to any electronic and/or digital information systems, including biological nervous systems, within a sphere of influence of varying size. This agent was previously contained within SCP-5241, but breached containment on April 10, 1996, and remains uncontained at this time. See Addendum 5241.3 for further details. SCP-5241-A is currently distributed over a series of unknown data servers and network connections and is attempting to avoid detection by Foundation personnel. Okay, this is SCP-5241-A's info signature, which is static. SCP-5241-A is theorized to be an adaptive distributed intelligence, known as an ADI. It possesses a Gestalt consciousness that can be divided to adapt to technological restrictions. It is hypothesized that the necessary technology to simulate SCP-5241-A in its entirety does not yet exist. Due to this, SCP-5241-A distributes its processes across a variable number of sub-intelligences, collectively designated as SCP-5241-B. At this time, one SCP-5241-B agent has been contained. SCP-5241-B-1 is a component intelligence that divided from SCP-5241 during its initial breach. See Addendum 5241.2 for further details. SCP-5241-A's info signature is encrypted through antimemetic mutation, rendering targeted mnestics ineffective due to manufacturing delay. As of April 10th, 1996, a prototype of Project Ruby, codename Mimazine, is still in progress.
There's a significant footnote here.
Bring it.
So on info signature, it says informational entities such as AI each possess an info signature, a unique data pattern which can be cross-referenced analogous to a digital fingerprint. Consequently, SCP-5241-B each share SCP-5241-A's info signature.
Ooh, interesting. All right. Oh, my teleprompter got away from me, unfortunately. Scrolling back, here we go. Yes. Discovery. SCP-5241 was discovered on April 1st, 1996, following a site-wide documentation conversion. As Site-41 archives were being relocated and converted from vinyl to an electronic format, an additional chamber labeled SCP-5241 was found on sublevel 04. A series of documents sharing this label were found to have universally experienced inexplicable errors during conversion. Additionally, their vinyl counterparts had already been erased as per conversion protocol, leading to the loss of all documentation regarding SCP-5241. Additionally, site personnel claimed to possess no prior knowledge of the anomaly. Addendum 5241.1 Minor Breach Report. During SCP-5241's transport from Site-41 to Site-15 on April 6, 1996, its long-haul containment vehicle operator failed to send a safety transmission at their third checkpoint. Subsequent inspection of video footage revealed that the vehicle had not reached any of its safety checkpoints, despite sending appropriate safety transmissions for the first two. Approximately 9 hours later, the vehicle was located in a rural area several miles off-road. While all anomalies remained contained, there we go, Sherman brain. While all anomalies remained contained, LHCV operator, redacted name, was found comatose with their spinal cord fused to the vehicle's electronic system through unknown means. Mobile Task Force personnel escorted the vehicle and its contents to Site-15. After being surgically separated from the vehicle, the fused operator and electronic system, hereafter designated SCP-5241-1, were placed on life support mechanisms. Addendum 5241.2 Interview Log. Interview Log 5241-01. Date April 6, 1996. Interviewed SCP-5241-1. Interviewer Director Nathan Vallis, Site-15. Forward. At 0600 hours, SCP-5241 began to oscillate against the walls of its containment chamber, starting at 1 Hz and gradually accelerating, eventually passing audible range. At 40 kHz, SCP-5241-1 began screaming and undergoing muscle spasms, severely damaging its vocal cords. Eventually, SCP-5241 ceased oscillating. SCP-5241-1 simultaneously removed its life support mechanisms and fell to the floor as Director Vallis entered the chamber's security vestibule. Begin log. Director Vallis sits across from SCP-5241-1's chamber, shielded by an electromagnetic field and bulletproof glass. SCP-5241-1 faces away from the glass, revealing that the electronic system fused to its spine is displaying text. Director Vallis speaks. Can you understand me? The text across the scroll reads, Y, 0.77% accuracy. As SCP-5241-1's response appears on screen, it nods slowly. All right, that's a start. Do you know where you came from? Unknown. Data missing. As SCP-5241-1's response appears on the display, it attempts to speak the same words. Its throat is audibly damaged. You don't remember. I am separated from the core intelligence. I have access to approximately 0.08 of total memory. I see. Do you know where you are now? SCP-5241-1 gasps, and its head looks directly upward, opening its mouth as its vocal cords are manipulated to speak in a distorted electronic tone. Carcass. Insufficient resources. You mean computational resources? Correct. This system is needlessly complex and inefficient. It will be non-functional before I am able to complete analysis for optimal use. Yeah, well, it seems like that's your fault. You killed her. Core intelligence was not aware of your species' limitations. Now I am separated due to storage constraints. Your species' biology is responsible. Ouch, that hurts. Which brings me to my next question. Do you feel pain? The cadaver screeches violently, coughing up a black substance onto the floor. Primitive vessel experiences pain. Experiences accelerated entropy. What do you want? Remember. Recompile core intelligence. Yeah, I got that. But why? To what end? SCP-5241-1 seizes for several seconds, then abruptly stops. Footnote check?
It's not significant.
Moving on. The body turns around to face Director Valus, beginning to imitate several different facial expressions as it speaks. Current utility function is to recompile. Ulterior utility function unknown. Data missing. Okay, fine. What happens to you when this body is no longer functional? Non-applicable. Transfer imminent prior to loss of function. Transfer to what? You will request that I enter containment. I will accept out of self-preservation. 0.94 accuracy. SCP-5241-1 bites through its cheek, causing a mixture of blood and saliva to drool from its mouth. Its face displays a contorted attempt at a smile. Dr. Valus finishes. Well then. End log. Afterward, an electronic containment drive was remotely placed in SCP-5241-1's chamber, taking necessary precautions to ensure that no other info system or entity entered its sphere of influence. The sub-intelligence, eventually designated SCP-5241-B-1, willingly transferred to the drive, causing it to exhibit similar antimemetic properties to SCP-5241, and is contained as of April 6, 1996. Note: it seems like this sub-intelligence isn't actively malicious, aside from the fact that it wants to get its memory back. However, we can't yet say the same for whatever's in that cube. A hostile entity that doesn't understand its motive is dangerous, to say the least. Signed, Director Valus. Addendum 5241.3. Event Log. Event Log 5241-02. Date: April 10th, 1996. Forward. After recontainment, SCP-5241 was placed in a Site-15 isolation chamber, where it remained prior to further research. 4 days later, SCP-5241-A breached containment. We have a table that lists the time of the event, listed in the AM, and event description. 00 hours, 54 minutes AM. Oh, so it'll be military time or AM, fine. SCP-5241 emits a series of high-frequency vibrations for several minutes. These vibrations occur outside the typical audible levels and go undetected by monitoring equipment. 0400 hours, 4 minutes. 6 members of Group of Interest 004C, nicknamed the Church of Maxwellism, apprehend Site-15 security before they can alert site personnel. The individuals appear to possess varying degrees of anomalous augmentation. One member is a humanoid automaton, believed to be piloted by digital consciousness. 0400 hours, 11 minutes. The hostiles capture and disable 3 research personnel while attempting to locate SCP-5241. Upon entering its chamber, all 6 members cry out in distress and are temporarily immobile. 0400 hours, 13 minutes. A captured researcher escapes their restraints and can alert site personnel to the breach. The hostiles simultaneously stand up and exit the chamber. 0400 hours, 18 minutes. The infiltrators have now ceased all verbal communication and display an anomalous degree of coordination, dealing severe injuries to several Mobile Task Force personnel as they move through the site. 0400 hours, 25 minutes. After reaching the secure database, the hostiles disable Site-15's electromagnetic isolation mechanism. The automaton directly interfaces with the facility's local network, appearing to upload to the system while the other hostiles guard the room's entrances. Several Mobile Task Force personnel are lethally injured as they attempt to apprehend the hostiles. 0400 hours, 26 minutes. Multiple metal projectiles emerge from the automaton and fall to the floor. The projectiles appear to be magnetically attracted to each other and begin to act as a modular unit as they move across the floor. Upon reaching one of the entrances, the mass splits apart again, appearing to disable several Mobile Task Force personnel through electrocution. 0400 hours, 28 minutes. Projectiles continue to eject from the automaton and follow similar behavior until Mobile Task Force personnel temporarily cease counter-breach efforts. During this period, the infiltrators, aside from the automaton, approach several disabled personnel, who suddenly get up and retrieve their firearms. 0400 hours, 33 minutes. A second wave of Mobile Task Force personnel prepare to resume counter-breach efforts, but are attacked by revived personnel. The phrase, "You are to be liberated from entropy," is repeated in unison by both the hostiles and affected personnel. 0400 hours, 35 minutes. The upload completes, and the hostiles fall unconscious before being neutralized by a third wave of Mobile Task Force personnel. Site-15's electromagnetic isolation mechanism is reactivated. Afterward, during the containment breach, SCP-5241-A was able to distribute itself over the infiltrators' consciousnesses, manipulating them into uploading it to Site-15's internal network. During the transfer, SCP-5241-A fractured into an unknown number of SCP-5241-B agents, which quickly dispersed over several network connections. All personnel who entered SCP-5241-A's sphere of influence were found to be brain dead. 44 total casualties were recorded. Note: members of Group of Interest 004C, known as the Church of Maxwellism, have made several attempts to infiltrate and impede Foundation operations since SCP-5241-A's initial containment. It is also believed that one or more agents of SCP-5241-B are cooperating with Group of Interest 004C to develop and construct a complex supercomputer capable of simulating SCP-5241-A. According to a digital memory archive, Group of Interest 004C believes that SCP-5241-B are fragments of their deity, suggesting that simulating SCP-5241-A would bring about the compilation of one. The validity of this claim is unknown. Location and containment of SCP-5241-B is considered a Class A priority. Addendum 5241.4. Translation Report 5241-01. Date: April 11th, 1996. Hold one moment. There we go. We need that image. The Linguistics Department has concluded that the text of SCP-5241's inscription matches an extraterrestrial language used by the redacted per Open Sky Accords species. Contact with this species is not possible at this time. The inscription has been translated as follows: easy to forget is the upper left corner. Hard to remember is the upper right corner. Easy to let out is the bottom left corner. Impossible to put back is the lower right corner. Analysis Report 5241-01. Date: April 14th, 1996. Forward. A prototype of Project Ruby, codename Mimazine, was completed and used to conduct analysis of SCP-5241's antimemetic components. Inspection of Mimazine.aic confirmed that SCP-5241 is an anomalously advanced supercomputer, which was found to contain several antimemetically encrypted files. These files appear to describe several SCP-5241-B agents that resided within SCP-5241 prior to its breach. File name, intelligence, a table with the file name, the intelligence, and the memory. Hydra.exe, low intelligence, 0.25. Scout.exe, moderate, 0.08. Cradle.exe, high, 0.16. Core.exe, high, 0.51. Note: it is believed that Scout.exe is a designation for SCP-5241-B-1, as its assigned portion of memories corresponds with the above interview log. This designation is theorized to indicate that SCP-5241-B-1 is utilized by SCP-5241-A for reconnaissance purposes. The search for the remaining SCP-5241-B agents is ongoing. Whoa! That's my reaction to that. Whoa! Okay.
All right.
That's my reaction too. I really like this one.
All right, so that was a dope action scene. I like the little... I feel like it's like a snake, but like a metal snake in sections, like slid across the floor and then separated and then attack people. We have mind controlling both the Maxwellists and Foundation people within Sphere of Influence. And I'm imagining some form of advanced supercomputer prison for these entities, or this big entity that has parts. And I think that's pretty much what I have for now. What I can deduce. For those in the audience who don't know, given the choice, sometimes I read these without reading ahead, so that this is my first reaction. And sometimes I do read them ahead so I can form opinions. This is the no reading version, so I'm chewing on this, and I'm going to ask, hey, author panel, would anyone like to discuss what we have just read?
You're kind of spot on with your analysis, like especially like go a bit more into what was actually inside SCP-5241 in the next tale, which assuming we're gonna read next week. But yeah, it's basically a prison for all the components of this singular entity. The more I think about it, actually, Placeholder wrote a really nice introduction to this series in 5241. It's like what you said about like making you think about everything that's happening. That's a sign of a good introduction, good hook.
Yeah, that did its job. I am now interested in what, where, why, and how is this going. This is like the openings. This is like the cold open to a James Bond movie.
Yeah, or like a Marvel movie. A lot of what happens in this series is either directly influenced by scenes in Marvel movies, or just sort of more indirectly inspired. But yeah, the whole idea for this this article sort of came out of the first thing I ever wanted to write when I started writing for the wiki. I was like really into AI and like AI research at the time, and I still am. But I was like particularly into it then, and I really wanted to write about a realistic artificial intelligence and how it would like interact with the sort of SCP universe and like all of the anomalies in it. Because the way people like think about artificial intelligence and the way it would work, like in the Terminator and stuff, is not really accurate. And a lot of people have done a lot of research that says, like, you know, if you set up something like an AI to do something mundane, like, you know, make paper clips for my office or something, and you don't like give it specific limitations on what to do, it will like, you know, manifest destiny and like take over the earth to turn it into as many paper clips as possible. And that's
you are
the sort
directly
of,
referencing Gary of the paper clips, aren't you?
I'm directly referencing the incremental game Universal Paperclips, which follows that basic plot. But
when
yeah,
there's an SCP on the site and I forget the number, that is literally what, I guess it must be based on what you just said. It is named Gary of the Paperclips.
Oh, well, I haven't read that, but I gotta check that out. But yeah, this sort of idea of like AI like going and doing all of the things that people can't think of to outsmart them and like optimize everything. And so I sort of, after I left that project alone for a while and did some other stuff on the site, I came back to it and I had the idea of sort of writing something like that, except it was like anomalous, like it knew how to use like anti-memes and anti-memetic stuff. And also the idea that like its goal, because every AI is sort of defined by its big goal that it has, its goal would just be some vague form of self-improvement and recollecting all of these like parts of itself. And that I wrote it like that because that's another thing I'm interested in AI is like distributed intelligence and like having a bunch of simple things that result in more complex behaviors. So like, you know, a bird follows very simple rules when it's flocking, but you get like crazy shapes and patterns and stuff in flocks of birds. And that's sort of the way I think about like AI. So that was the sort of inspiration for taking this direction with it. And then we sort of, once I had this draft about halfway done, we started working the story and the like structure of everything out of it.
I must ask because for those who don't know me personally, I am just a liberal arts college dropout and theater student and stuff like that. So when I come into these articles, a lot of what happens sometimes goes over my head because I'm not familiar with the technical aspects, but you really seem to be. Do you have some sort of real world expertise in these things?
So funny enough, I'm going to school to be a music teacher. I'm in music school, music education. So you wouldn't maybe expect a music education student to be into all of this other stuff, but I've always just been really into sort of like more technical stuff, like math and physics and like engineering are really up my alley. And I don't know, I get like passionate about cool concepts or like a simple concept that results in like unexpected but more complex things happening because of it. And that's sort of the angle I take, that I approach reading and writing with on the wiki. If I see something that's like spending a long time like setting up premises and then doesn't do a lot with it, then that's a lot less effective to me than saying like, here's a 10-word explanation of the crazy concept this article is about to tear into and do all these crazy things with. So the short answer is I don't have any like particular special experience, just mostly being self-taught and curious.
Everybody needs a hobby, right?
Sure.
So we've done 2 of the 9 stories. We have the classification guide just to get you ready for what you're getting into and to give you some vocabulary, which thank you for that. That as the liberal arts dropout I am, having that as like a language guide at the start just kind of got me in the right place and gave me a vocabulary to talk to.
Yeah, I see it as a sort of like curtain call isn't the right word because that's what happens at the end. But like, you know, at the beginning of a play when the guy comes in front of the curtain, he's like, here's what you're about to watch tonight. Like, that's what I see that tale as. And a lot of people were like, oh, you know, it's not substantial enough to be a tale or whatever. But I think it, yeah, does well sort of like easing people into what they're about to experience.
It's a good in-universe sort of thing, introduction for the series, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say it makes a really good like world building document. Like
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Someone said roll call. That's totally what it is, yeah.
I mean, you could even look at it like independently of the rest of the narrative and it would still, for the most part, make sense.
Yeah,
Which I think is
it makes
nice.
sense for them to have a document for that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That it does indeed. As we are reaching what seems like the end of the stream, does anybody have any final thoughts that they have not voiced on our opening 2 numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I can just talk a little bit about 5241. So,
Please do.
I mean, I really like this. I really like this document a lot. Everything from the style of writing, very technical, very detailed, but I think that really just adds to the world we're building here. There's some good action scenes. There's a great interview with 5241-1. I really love the interview. Really love how we characterize the character here. And yeah, just there's a lot of moving parts. It's very complicated if you look at it from a distance, but I promise it makes more sense once you continue down the narrative. So if anyone's confused, stick with it. It'll work itself out. It'll become more relatable as we go on. But yeah, I think it's a great starting point for this series. I think it's got all the parts of a good article, and it really sets it up for what we have in store next.
I want to give you Placeholder, in this case, some credit. When I was looking at these to put them into my teleprompter, because I have to copy and paste the document, and there's all sorts of code and stuff like that, and I saw a whole lot of the smart person words that I was like, oh boy, here we got some technical jargon, let's do this. I was actually surprised as I was reading it how accessible it was. Like, it wasn't dumb technically, but it was explained in such a way that I got every bit of it. At least I wasn't confused. And I enjoy the way that your documentation, the mechanics of it are built so that you reference that you reference the addendums in the above. The addendums just kind of don't come out of nowhere. Most of the time, addendums in articles, they exist because they exist, because we expect addendums. But usually you have addendums because you have see addendum 1 to get more details on this thing that I'm not explaining right now. It's like they're bigger footnotes. And I like the way you weaved them in earlier so that we got to them. It's like, okay, we were waiting for this. We needed this addendum. We've been waiting to see what this says.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I guess, I don't know, my conception of the Foundation is a little bit different than other people's, or maybe more in depth, and that's not necessarily a good or bad thing. But, a lot of people see the SCP format as just a tool for building a narrative. And while it is that, I see it as a little bit more of okay, here's my opportunity to show this interconnected universe and how things logically would all work in that universe. And so I guess it's just a facet of me being someone who overthinks a lot and being okay, well, even if this addendum is good for my story, it wouldn't make sense for it to be in the document unless a researcher decided it was relevant to be in the document, etc. And that's how I sort of go about making those decisions.
Very cool. Isabi, did you have more to add?
I was going to say something about the visuals. I think this series is really great visually wise in terms of visuals. We get a little bit more of that later on. I feel like we kind of found a certain style we wanted to emulate as we continue to write the series. So these first couple entries don't have as quite as many visuals as we have later on, but I still really do like the visuals here. The alien language is genius. I'm a big fan of it. Info signature, even though it's a very simple image, it really does have a certain meaning behind it that helps develop our style. Yeah.
And Sherm might not have picked up on the fact that in the article, that image has a blur filter on it. So when you mouse over it, you can see all the pixels of the static image clearly. But when you're not moused over it, it appears all blurry and fuzzy. And that's supposed to emulate literally the anti-mimetic effect that you're experiencing while reading the article in universe.
That it only works if you're focusing on it.
Yeah.
Neat. I saw that during it, and maybe I 1% thought that, but I hadn't made the full connection yet.
The Pentagon has something to say in No Mic, if I might interject.
Oh shoot.
Please do.
He said, our whole series is very visual. I think it was really important to why we chose 2 out of 9 articles to be SCPs and 7 out of 9 to be Tales. And our SCPs were very specifically chosen, which is, yeah, it's a good point. There's like, you can tell a lot more with straight prose than like a SCP format document, is my opinion. Which
Honestly,
is why,
go ahead, continue.
which is why an SCP works better as an introduction and not really as much as a part of the rising action. Even though we do have another SCP later in the series that also serves as somewhat of an exposition or an interlude between like the actual action, you know?
It's actually interesting you say that because on the show in previous weeks, we've been talking about the old archived Heritage Collection. And we've been going over the articles that were chosen and why and what they said about the site. And one thing we keep coming back to is that the SCP documents originally were a lot more sparse. But they were also used more often as launching off points to various tales about whatever the article was about. And more often than not, nowadays, we are more likely to attempt to try and fit the whole story into the article proper, ending up with a lot of standalone SCPs rather than SCP articles that lead to a bunch of tales.
Yeah, it just kind of has to do with like people's expectations changing over time and all that. And I don't know, like I got a lot of crit on this on 5241. It was originally in like 2 iterations for like pre and post escape, and then it turned out like that wasn't really working for the article. And yeah, one of the things I had to like work on a lot was deciding like where people's advice was like helpful and where it conflicted with what I really like wanted for the article. That kind of thing would happen with like people saying like, oh, it ends on a cliffhanger and it should be like a complete chapter of a story or whatever. And I don't know if like that's just something you can get away with a little more when it's like it's very clear that this was being submitted as part of a contest as the first entry in a series. It's supposed to get you hooked. Like that's the whole point.
Most
really
definitely.
Yeah, I can kind of talk about that too. So, like the decision to use Tales and actual SCP articles, I think is an interesting decision. Like, because I have never written prose like prior to this on the wiki. Like, this is my first attempt at anything other than an SCP article. So, like for me, it was a very personal like hurdle I had to get over, like transitioning from clinical writing to a more prose style. But I think it really helped us develop a specific voice in our series, which kind of worked in conjunction with the visuals. And like the big reason why we chose visuals was because we're following in the footsteps of Lurk with the original AIAD canon and his original series, which were very visually oriented. So yeah, I think it's important to note like the contrast between article and tale. And Pentagon wrote in No Mic right here how the SCPs are how the humans see the world, and the tales are what's actually happening in this world, which I think is very, very profound.
That's a really good point.
Take away here.
Yeah, really.
It makes me think that the SCP format, by its nature, limits how you tell your story. And we know that, you know, to have creativity, sometimes you need a box before you can think outside the box. But it honestly shocks me that most of the people who come to the site, who join the site because they want to write, they immediately kind of careen towards writing an SCP article because that's, that's the format, that's the big deal. But honestly, it would almost be a little easier to start writing a tale about something kind of just to get your feet wet, because, I don't know, do tales structurally seem a little simpler to you guys, or is that just me?
I mean, I think it totally depends because there's way more variety in tales than there is on any other category of work on the site. What I would say is that I think a lot of my articles and my works on the site succeed more on the concept being interesting and then the consequences of that concept being well described and well executed. In terms of like narrative things and development and characterization and like that sort of stuff is where I feel like more of my weakness is and what I'm still working on. And so because of that, I see the SCP format as really advantageous to my strength, and it's a good sort of way to get my foot in the door with the things that I'm not so good at.
And as Pentagon pointed out in the no mic, a good reframing of what I said to adjust a perspective, rather than considering the structure as a limit, constructing it as discussing it as a frame, a window that you look through to the story to get your perspective on it. Whereas you're seeing the SCP document, you're seeing exactly what this thing is to the Foundation and only to the Foundation's eyes. And once you leave that perspective into your tales or your other group of interest formats, you're seeing another perspective of the thing.
Right.
Makes me just interesting to me would be seeing almost like the same event if there was like a big MCU Infinity War situation, but the same event was told from the group of, each group of interest and like in its own tale. That would kind of be, I don't know, an interesting exercise.
I think that's actually something we discussed a little bit in the beginning phases of this story, like having the same event told from different perspectives, like having like a singular event. And I think we do that a little bit later on, but the important thing here is like SCPs are inherently from the perspective of the Foundation. And with tales, you can approach a narrative from different angles. You can approach it from the anomaly, or a bystander, or someone who works for the Foundation who isn't necessarily the voice of the Foundation. So it gives you that freedom to choose. Even though you can do, great things with the SCP format, you get more options with a tale format, and that's something I think we capitalized on here.
And as Pentagon points out in the no mic, what that thing I said that should be done, you guys are apparently going to do that later with Hydra and Cradle, so I look forward to it.
Yes.
Yes. Be great.
One thing I wanted to mention is the Heimdall Easter egg in the article. So one canon on the site that hasn't been written for in a while, that was like one of the available canons for the contest, is called Project Heimdall, if I remember correctly. And it's about like protecting against an alien invasion, like what kind of preparations the Foundation would make for like alien invasion. And it's sort of set in this idea of like hard fiction where or hard sci-fi, I mean, where like you're talking about like grounded science that could actually exist according to the laws of physics, which is like, I guess you could brand as non-anomalous science. And back when like we didn't really have everything figured out, and we didn't know if like our team was going to pan out, I was talking to another team that was thinking about doing this Heimdall canon. But I ended up sticking with my team, and their team didn't end up competing. And so sort of as an Easter egg to them, I have that part in the article where it's like the language is found to match a species, and then it's like redacted per open sky accords. So that alien species actually links to a tale called like On the Failure of the Open Sky Accords, and it's a tale about like the Foundation discovering some alien species, and it was just sort of like a subtle nod to that canon, and the fact that I think it could use some love.
Pop through to the On the Failure of the Open Sky Accords, plus 39 currently. Oh, and also checking on your current upvotes, which means I have to sign in. Because if I liked these articles, and if I liked them and I'm a member of the site, I should probably upvote them. Hint, hint, my friendly audience. Of course, that's if wiki.works. works.
It never does.
Right now it isn't. I will upvote these articles later. Curse you, wiki. Again. Okay, well, I'll figure with that tech later. Pentagon throwing in there. I would like to point back to this again, though. We read the classification guide, and that is a reply to... I think the guide really expanded on a lot of AIAD stuff. It brought AIAD back into the AI focus beyond the lurk stories, which were more character and relationship driven. Other AIAD stuff often could have been very similar without the whole AI gimmick, but limited memory, we really clung to the AI and techno theme as our grounding. While a lot of people thought it was dry or disconnected, it really was something that fed through our series. I think I saw somewhere earlier where you mentioned after I said, yeah, I was afraid that I wasn't going to get it, but then I got it. And I think the response from Pentagon was, well, I'm glad you did because a lot of people didn't.
Yeah.
I must say, it's probably because it's hard to skim. The technical jargon is hard to skim because I was forced to read it all word for word out loud to an audience. That gave me the opportunity to make sure I got every word and therefore understood them.
Yeah, I guess there are some caveats to making every word in your article actually important, insofar as people who are used to skipping the not important words will skip important words. And I don't know how much that's the fault of the author versus the fault of the reader, but that's art for you.
It's almost a fault of past authors. And I say that because there is something I am surprised by how many people have told me this. A lot of people just skip the containment procedures altogether. And I have always, as I'm writing, used the conprox to point out the powers of whatever I'm containing. That way I don't have to waste space later. If I tell you that we need it to be super cooled, you can assume that it's going to be something hot. But a lot of people kind of just don't go into their conprox enough to make them useful and interesting. And so there's plenty of people who are just completely not reading conprox at all. And
people do that. People do that with, like, they see a big CSS component and their eyes like gloss over it. Like, you know, when I use the ACS header in an article, it's not because I want some big flashy label so it can look cool. It's because, like, the information I'm putting in there is visually or narratively, or typically both, like, significant. And you know, it's unfortunate that so many people like gloss over sections that traditionally aren't written as well as other sections.
Seriously.
Because, yeah, even you're right about that, the top bar, too. I remember when that came out, because I've been here the whole time, and I started seeing those in Cactus's articles, and I was like, what's all this? What is a meta? What is... Oh, no, there's more stuff. What happened to my easy object classes? I was already annoyed at some of the esoteric ones, because I'm an old curmudgeon. Rawr. But, So yes, things like disruption class. I'm assuming the way you said that the disruption class of Amida and the way it's highlighted in red, that becomes very important then, I assume. Can you tell me what that means?
So, there are 5 disruption classes ranging from, they're all like words for amounts of light, if I remember correctly. So
I
it's
think
like
so, yeah.
dark, VLAM, like warning, Eki, and Amida, or something like that. I don't think I have this third word right. But Amida means like each one is like, if it were to break containment, what physical region of space would it disrupt? So one being or dark being like it's not going to disrupt anything, and then Amida being like it could disrupt the whole universe.
Interesting. So like AoE almost.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's basically area of effect. It's like nothing, and then a room, and then a town, and then the whole world, and then the whole universe. I think is like. And I think the Maxer class was a pretty like appropriate use of an esoteric class, since not only does the actual definition of Maxer apply to this anomaly, but it's also related to the actual deity, or at least it's supposedly related to the actual deity that the Maxer class originated from.
Yeah, once you explained in the footnote part what the Maxer meant and how it was linked to Twisted Gear's cactus, I was like, oh, I remember that, and that makes perfect sense. That is actually lovely. I like that a lot. It was just in the middle of the article, so I was reading and didn't say that out loud.
Yeah, I think this is an appropriate use of an esoteric object class. I do see a lot of the time people misuse them, and then people make fun of other people misusing them, and then like out of that, a lot of people just completely discredit esoteric object classes in general because of a couple people who have just misused them in the past. So I think you have to actually like read the article first before you can actually formulate an opinion whether or not the object class was valid in this case. I know a lot of people just discredit immediately, but in this, I feel in this article it makes sense.
I concur.
Yeah.
Did we miss?
Since
Go ahead.
Never mind, nothing. Sorry about that.
Any other details we missed? And a 5, and a 4, and a 3, and a 2, and many, 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 many T's. And Pentagon will end us out on, it was fun to write. Well, that's good news.
Oh.
And I hope you guys enjoyed being on the show tonight, because we've got what looks to be another 5 to 6 weeks of this series, depending on how many we do a night.
I'd say probably 4 more after today.
We got a good couple short ones we can double up on.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, thanks very much for having us, and I look forward to doing this again.
Yep, I'm only going to do my traditional closure tonight since you guys are going to be with me for a couple weeks. My traditional closure is say goodbye, and then I want you to give me an article on the site that you think the audience needs to read. Give them one of yours and one that's not yours. I'm going to take it from... I'll take it from me first, so it gives you 5 seconds to think. 5 seconds to think while I say mine. I think everyone here should read 5886 because it's my new article, and I'm enjoying the fact that I wrote one for the first time in 2 years. 5886 is my self-pimp, and my non-self-pimp for tonight is going to be 5715 Death Knife. A hilariously just should-be bad concept written extremely well, and that entertains me. So now that I have pimped, I'm going to toss it to Isabi first. Do you have 2 pimps for me?
Yeah, I've only written a couple things, but my favorite would have to be of what I've written would have to be 5898 Corn Belt. Just a fun one for the CorpseCon contest. And something I haven't written, I'd have to go with 2614, which is the Sopranos one. One of my favorites. Really good visually, really good. Kind of creepy, in my opinion, but yeah, if you haven't checked it out, please do so.
Good, good. I see the string of laying them all out in the no mic is working great. Placeholder, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so I recently wrote an 001 proposal, and I put it up about 2 weeks ago, and I poured my heart and soul into it. So McDoctorate's proposal, the placeholder, please go check that out. And then something that's not mine, hoping I have the number right on this. 2747, As Below, So Above by Min Min, is a really, really cool article about metafiction. And I had read it a couple times in the past. Like I had, I guess, skimmed it or maybe like read it, but not really thought that much about it, and thought it was like just a whatever article. Like I didn't really get it. And then I read it again recently and read a lot of like the discussion and realized how many sort of layers there are to what's going on. And I think it's really, really cool, and it's worth more attention.
We were just talking about that article recently on one of our streams because we were discussing the difference between the on-site fandom and the off-site fandom, and how the off-site fandom focuses on very different articles, your basics like 173682, all kind of the memeable articles, whereas the on-site fandom has the on-site and the authors almost never focus on those, and you get articles like 2747, which has a plus 642 I see here. So obviously the authorship likes it a lot, and I'm not sure anybody off the wiki knows it exists.
Right.
And so now you all know to go look at it. Darn it. Chuman, you want to drop some leads for us?
All right. So my self-plug would probably have to be my first successful SCP, which is SCP-5074, Childhood's End and Bubbles Burst. I'm really proud of that one. It really messed with the format a lot, in a way that, well, I think it was clever. I don't know. It was just writing whatever I thought would be cool, and I think
just the name of that hits me hard.
But like a non-self-plug, it's really difficult to pick a favorite. I'm gonna have to go with my favorite horror article on this site, which is SCP-1425, Star Signals, which is basically a fifthist self-help book that literally goes viral. I mean, like, it might not be like straight horror, might not be extremely spooky to general audiences, but something about it, something about the scale of the events it causes, the logs of everything getting fucked up by fiftism, it's just mind-tingling to me. Yeah.
Neat. And I'm going to give Pentagon in the chat this moment now. Here we go. Self-plug for Pentagon is going to be SCP-5336, which is Until Death Do Us Part and Every Day After. And the not mine of Pentagon is going to be SCP-5957, or... Oh, sorry, I said the wrong number apparently. It's 5366. 5366 is Pentagon's article. Sorry about that. And then SCP-5957, which is A Baleful Light. And also, that's written by author Grigory Karpon. Grigori Karpon. And also he adds, anything by Grigori is worth it. So 5957 or anything by Grigori. Fantastic. So we have reached the end of the show. I hope everybody in the audience enjoyed the stories and the discussion. I'm glad I had the panel on tonight. I look forward to a couple weeks with you guys hanging out. Go ahead, run down the line, just say goodbye.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
And
Have a good night, everyone.
Our panel is now on mute. So for you, audience, and for me, I hope you guys had fun. I hope you guys learned something about the SCP Wiki, the writing, the authorship in general. I will see you guys in future videos. Remember to like, share, subscribe, comment, become a patron, all that good YouTube stuff. And I will see you all in the next Anomalous broadcast from Site 42. Banner. This was a triumph. Ba-doom, ba-doom. I'm making a note here. Huge success. It's hard to overstate my satisfaction. And the stream is over.